Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh, my God. So your former predecessor, I guess that's not enough for you. Okay, on Iran. I don't think there's a debate. There's like a cat fight going on in your own party about whether to go after Iran. Have you commissioned any day after planning? So any force protection, any use of ground troops in Iran, any cost assessments? Because I don't think we doubt what we can do as a country in the attack. It's the day after with Iraq and Afghanistan that so many of us have learned to be so deeply concerned about.
Here is something nobody is asking out loud, but everyone should be thinking about. Pete Hegseth left Fox News to become Secretary of Defense. He took a massive pay cut to do it. He went from making millions a year as a television host to $253,000 a year, running the most powerful military on earth. And now, more than a year into the job, his own former colleagues are calling the Pentagon a disaster. His own former spokesperson walked out and wrote a public piece describing it as a full-blown meltdown. The White House was reported to be quietly searching for his replacement. And Fox News, the place he came from, recently had one of its own senior military analysts go on air and say he disagreed with Hegseth's decisions. So here is the real question. If this falls apart, where does Pete Hegseth go? And more importantly, what does this Senate exchange reveal about why it is already falling apart?
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I said in your hearing, when you had your confirmation hearing, that my biggest concern with you at the helm was the potential use of the military in ways that contradict the Constitution or that taint what I hope we all want, which is an apolitical military. And when I asked you about whether you would accept an order that was actually given to your predecessor, Secretary Esper, Trump's SecDef, to deploy active duty troops against unarmed protesters and to, in Secretary Esper's words, shoot at them, shoot at their legs, you said this was all theoretical. Here we are, a few months later, you've deployed 4,700 troops to Los Angeles and against the wishes of the governor. And my colleague across the aisle was right. It is the first time since 1965 that we have deployed Guard troops without the permission of the governor. In all the instances he laid out, the president had sent in the military to protect protesters, not against the protesters. So you may dismiss it, but I feel like this is a fundamental issue of American democracy. If you love your country and you want an apolitical military, then it should be the last resort, not the first resort in our country to use them. So to get to the non-theoretical, have you authorized the uniformed military to detain or arrest protesters in Los Angeles?
Senator, I would just start by saying you're not a protester if you're throwing concrete
100%.
at law
Arrest those
enforcement
people.
officers.
Throw them in the jail. 100%. But what you're doing is something different. Everyone knows this is a political decision, right? So we don't trust that you're using the best interests of the military, certainly, and of democracy on top of that. So have you given the order? That's all I want to know. It's not theoretical. For the U.S. military, not law enforcement. They can arrest all day long. That's their job. Do they have the ability, the uniformed military, to arrest and detain protesters currently today? It's a yes or no thing. Authority.
It's sort of amusing the extent to which the speculation is out there. These troops are given very clear orders.
Then what is the order? Then list it out for us. Be a man. List it out. Did you authorize them to detain or arrest? That is a fundamental issue of democracy. I'm not trying to be a snot here. I'm just trying to get the actual. Did you authorize them to do that?
All of these orders and what they're sent there to do are public. They are there
so say it. So say it. Yes or no?
I'd like to.
Please, yes or no?
As I've said time and time again through interruption, they're there to protect law enforcement,
do they have
ICE
the ability
officers
to arrest?
who are trying to do their job, deporting illegals who were allowed in by the previous administration.
So they cannot arrest and detain citizens of the United States, the uniformed military.
As we've stated, if necessary, in their own self-defense, they could temporarily detain and hand over to ICE. But there's no arresting going on. And you know this better than you're trying to play political games. There's no arresting of U.S. personnel.
Of the U.S. military against members of the protest. Have you authorized U.S. military cyber tools to investigate people participating in these protests? Yes or no?
Certainly in no way that I'd be aware of.
Okay, that's good. I love that answer. That's great. Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country, who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against honor? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh my God. So your former predecessor, I guess that's not enough for you. Okay, on Iran. I don't think there's a debate. There's like a cat fight going on in your own party about whether to go after Iran. Have you commissioned any day after planning? So any force protection, any use of ground troops in Iran, any cost assessments? Because I don't think we doubt what we can do as a country in the attack. It's the day after with Iraq and Afghanistan that so many of us have learned to be so deeply concerned about. Have you authorized day after planning?
As I've said, we have plans for everything, Senator.
Okay.
Let's slow down and look at what just happened in that room. Senator Elissa Slotkin sat across from Pete Hegseth and asked him one direct question. Have you authorized the U.S. military, not law enforcement, the actual uniformed military, to detain or arrest protesters in Los Angeles? She asked it clearly. She asked it multiple times. All she wanted was yes or no. He never gave it. Instead, he talked about people throwing concrete. He called her questions political games. He deflected, pivoted, and at one point told her to be careful what she reads in books. And then, when she pressed him on whether he had given any order to use lethal force against unarmed protesters, he laughed. In simple terms, this is what that means. A sitting U.S. senator, a former intelligence officer, asked the Secretary of Defense whether American soldiers have been authorized to arrest American citizens on American soil. And he refused to give a straight answer. Now, here is the context that makes that answer so serious. The United States has a law called the Posse Comitatus Act. It has been in place since 1878. It specifically prohibits the use of federal military forces to police domestic civilians unless Congress explicitly authorizes it. It exists because the founders understood that a government willing to point its own military at its own people is no longer a government serving those people. Senator Slotkin raised this directly. She pointed out that deploying Guard troops to Los Angeles against the wishes of the governor was the first time since 1965 that had been done. And she reminded Hegseth that in every historical example her colleague across the aisle cited, the military was sent to protect protesters, not to be used against them. Hegseth dismissed this. He called it theoretical. He laughed it off, but this is not theoretical for the 4,700 troops who were actually deployed. And here is where this connects to something much larger. At one point in that exchange, Senator Slotkin asked Hegseth whether he had authorized military cyber tools to investigate people participating in protests. His answer was, and these are almost his exact words, certainly in no way that I would be aware of. Think about what that phrase means. The Secretary of Defense does not know what his own department is doing, or he is unwilling to say. In either case, that is a serious problem. She then asked whether he had commissioned any day after planning for Iran. Planning for what happens after combat operations begin, after troops are on the ground, after the mission is done. Anyone who watched the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan knows that the absence of that planning was catastrophic. Hundreds of billions spent, thousands of lives lost, Years of chaos that followed a military victory that turned into a strategic disaster. Hegseth's answer, we have plans for everything, Senator. That is not a plan. That is a talking point. Now let's connect this to where things actually stand today. According to reporting from NBC News, the White House spent months unable to find senior advisors willing to work under Hegseth. At least 3 people turned down roles. The administration struggled to recruit qualified candidates who were both politically acceptable and willing to step into the documented chaos of his Pentagon. His former chief of staff resigned. A former press aide resigned and wrote publicly that Hegseth's office was in, as documented, total chaos. His former senior spokesperson, John Ulliott, published a piece in Politico describing the Pentagon as a full-blown meltdown and warning that Hegseth was at risk of losing his position. And NPR reported in April 2025 that the White House had already started quietly searching for a replacement. Now think about what Hegseth gave up to be here. According to The Street, his salary as a Fox News co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend was roughly 10 times what he makes as Secretary of Defense. He was pulling in millions. He left that to run the Pentagon at $253,000 a year with no background in managing a large organization, no senior government experience, and a confirmation that only cleared by a single tie-breaking vote. He went back to Fox after the Signal chat scandal to defend himself, not to Congress, not in a formal statement. Back to his old TV show, sitting with his old colleagues, calling his critics disgruntled former employees. That is where he felt safe, and even that did not fully hold. Fox News' own senior military analyst, retired 4-star General Jack Keane, went on Fox and Friends and publicly said he disagreed with Hegseth's decision to fire the Army Chief of Staff mid-war. He called General Randy George a generational leader and said he had not seen anyone quite like him. That is Fox News' own military voice breaking from Hegseth at the moment of a live war. So here is what the picture actually looks like. A man who was not qualified for this job, who could not answer basic questions at his confirmation, who deployed troops to American streets and refused to clearly explain what they were authorized to do, who shared military attack plans in unsecured group chats, who fired the Army's top general in the middle of active combat, who presided over a Pentagon described by his own people as in meltdown, and who left a television job that paid him far more than this one. And if this ends badly, and the signs are pointing in that direction, he does not simply go back to his old desk. That seat is gone. Fox News moved on. The television landscape moved on. The audience that watched him on weekend mornings is not sitting there waiting. Senator Slotkin put it plainly in that hearing. She loves the military. She served alongside it. And she said simply that she is worried about him tainting it. That is not a partisan attack. That is an accountability question. If you are handed the most powerful military institution in human history, and you use it to deploy troops against protesters without clear legal authority, and you fire the generals who push back, and you refuse to answer direct questions from elected officials, at what point are you no longer protecting the institution and just protecting yourself? Senator Slotkin asked him to be a man and list out the orders. He didn't. We deserve to know. If this matters to you, leave a comment and subscribe for more breakdowns like this.